Live now from Chronology Court in East Texas, the hearing of arguments. Good evening, everybody! Okay, I am the judge of today's trial of Chronology Court. As you can clearly see, we have a very enthusiastic audience watching us right now. Let's introduce the parties. On the left, our defendant, Miss Confederate States of America. And to the right, our prosecution, the Union Gang? They insisted. The prosecution brings the defendant Miss CSA onto court for the following reasons that will be listed. Number 1, insurrection for immoral cause. Number 2, idolatry of criminals. And number 3, actions constituting irreparable damage to civil rights. Prosecution will go first. Thank you, Your Honor. It is in the belief of my client that the defendant is guilty of all charges. Not only did she break her constitutionally bound federation with our United States, but she did it for the singular purpose of preserving her institutions of slave labor. The Confederate statues built to honor her greatest heroes stand as shrines to her despicable lost cause mythology that stunted the development of rights for minorities, especially free people of color, that continue to this day. Alright, the defense will now give their rebuttal. Your Honor, I see it fit to make my statement a bit longer than 30 seconds. I do not fight the charge of insurrection, but claiming that my client committed it simply to preserve an immoral status quo disrespects all those who nobly marched forth to the front line stretching from Nevada to Virginia to defend their homes under attack by a corrupt federal power. And claiming that the statues of our great and glorious generals were part of some demonic mythos that did everything and anything in its power to suppress minority rights is simply a delusion. And with those opening statements, it's now on to the crossfire. There will be a combined 4 minutes minimum of it. Well, I suppose I'll start this as well. I asked the gentleman representing the defendant what exactly he means when he states I disrespect the sacrifices of all those. Oh, it's quite simple. What I'm saying is your cries of our villainous Confederacy, fighting tooth and bone so desperately trying to defend our peculiar institution. Slavery is an oversimplification of historical fact. It's a common modern misconception that the war was all about slavery. Literary historians, on the other hand, they'll tell you the real cause of the Civil War. And thus comes the bombshell. See this flag right here? It's no symbol of hate. It's of heritage. A heritage of a cause so noble for primarily for 2 reasons. Unfair taxation, just like the American Revolution. And above all, states' rights. To do what? Well, also then it's a basic freedom granted to us by the Constitution. We're using YouTube comments as evidence now? States' rights to make choices for themselves, free of potential corrupt federal meddling. What choices? What was the federal government apparently trying to meddle in that the South didn't want it to? And I'll give you a hint. It wasn't tariffs. In any case, saying the South went off to get men killed for the institution of slavery is preposterous. Even most of the Confederate leadership was against it. Well, this is a moot point anyways because of the various ordinances of secession, but I'll indulge you. Johnny Rebs did march off to die for slavery, and they knew it. Most of them came from slaveholding families. Look at the records from the Army of Northern Virginia alone. The average soldier was 42% more likely to own a slave than the average Southerner. And on to your second point, the Confederate leadership, which mostly consisted of rich plantation owners whose entire fortune depended on slavery, were against it. I have a quote. It comes from Almost Robert himself, in fact. In a letter to his wife in 1856, he says, "In this enlightened age, there are few, I believe, but will acknowledge that slavery as an institution is a moral and political evil in any country." Oh, funny. I have my own Robert E. Lee quote. It reads something pretty different from that. "The blacks are immeasurably better off here than in Africa, morally, socially, and physically. The painful discipline they are undergoing is necessary for their instruction as a race, and I hope will prepare them and lead them to better things. How long their subjugation may be necessary is known and ordered by a wise and merciful providence." A quote pulled far out of the original context, no doubt.
It's from the exact same source.
Whatever. I would now ask the gentleman, what exactly does he have against Confederate statues exactly? You act as if they're the works of some pointy-hat satanic cult who burns crosses in people's yards. I mean, these are markers of history. Tearing them down is like tearing down history itself. I doubt legends like Lee and Jackson would have their names erased from history simply because their statues got torn down, but that's besides the point. You are right that the Ku Klux Klan didn't build most of the Confederate monuments we all know and love, but the group that did was not subtle in their bias. The United Daughters of the Confederacy, as they were called, not only erected the statues, whose unveiling days overflowed with pro-Jim Crow rhetoric, but also oversaw the education of almost every new child, Northern and Southern, of the post-antebellum era. They ensured history textbooks on the American Civil War, hell, anything about the American South up to their time, was sanitized of the institutionally racist structures of Southern society to paint a rosy, almost utopian view of antebellum life, especially in comparison to Reconstruction. Here's an Alabama history book from 1961. I asked the gentleman, what is it that he reads?
I don't quite see the problem you're trying to make with this. It all seems pretty okay.
You're right. Throughout this whole textbook, black slaves are painted as happy, obedient servants to their white masters. There is absolutely no mention of lynchings. Segregation post-Reconstruction is mentioned and brushed aside, and any influential freedmen of the Reconstruction era are dismissed as devious, deceptive, or worse, extremists. My favorite line of this whole textbook, here, I'll show it. It calls slavery the earliest form of social security in the United States.
What?
Yeah, it's both stupid and in poor taste. Oh, those are some nice cherry-picked examples you ripped out of the textbook.
These pages aren't ripped, but I do not see a single mention about civil rights and how my client damaged them.
Oh, you want to talk civil rights? Okay, let's talk civil rights. I am sure the jury needs a no introduction on what Jim Crow laws were, so I will not try to go into detail on them. We already saw how whitewashed Southern history became, but depictions of free people of color probably contributed more to the racism of Jim Crow, especially depictions of Reconstruction. And hey, why take my word for it when you can hear straight from the powerful people at the time?
Oh, I see where this is going. Come on, pull out the racist quote. I dare you.
Well, what if I don't know which one to pick? Come on, you said you wanted a racist quote. Call one towards you.
Nothing but bloodshed, and a good deal of it could answer the purpose of redeeming the state from Negro and carpetbagger rule. Senator Ben Tillman, Democrat.
Another one?
Slavery was the apprenticeship by which savage races had been educated and trained into civilization by their superiors. The greatest crime of this century was the emancipation of the Negroes. Bradley T. Johnson, February 1896.
And that guy was just a lawyer before the Civil War. Where are you going with these? I think you'll see soon enough. Want more?
I'm good.
Alright, we're gonna wrap up really quickly because we're almost out of time, so the jurors will now have the chance to vote.